how many people are on your social media platform. I don't like to use the word follower. I think there's a lot of narcissism about the word follower. Who am I that I should have followers? Why have that word? I mean, call it a network, call it what you want. They're neither friends nor followers. We probably need to find the right term, if we can, for some of these changes that we are experiencing. If I don't resolve that internal experience by myself, with the help of friends, family, well-wishers, with the help of a mental health professional, with the help of a guide, in whichever way, early identification and early seeking help. So identification and intervention, incomplete without each other. You're feeling bad for a couple of days, had something at your workplace, you feel low, 2, 3, 4 days, then you go, it starts falling back and you are back on your track. No, this is not depression. Now let's say this feeling low lasts for about 2 weeks. Let's say it's also coming up with impairment in your occupational, social, personal level of functionality. Then it could be a concern. Now you seek help.
Very honored to sit with Dr. Samir Parikh today, an eminent psychiatrist. He's the director of Department of Mental Health and Behavioral Sciences and National Mental Health Program of Fortis Healthcare. We're going to deep dive straight into questions which are close to me and my audience. Maybe he has answered them quite a bit. Doctor, we'll go straight into a simple question as, can you feel mental health that you're going through a trauma physically?
So, it's not that mental health is somewhere outside there. Mental health is very much a part of who I am, who you are. So even when we talk about, let's say, cause, so we say biopsychosocial, biological, which is various aspects about my body, psychological, social, which is the environment. The impact is also similar. So I will have some impact which is biological, let's say my appetite, let's say some pains, aches, fatigues, let's say sleep impairment, psychological, how I feel, how I think, social, which is my interaction with people, work, school, so on and so forth. So it's important to understand, and in fact I say this as a dare also to people at times, that give me a definition of health without putting mental health in the context. It doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist. In fact, people do say you look great, and it's mostly to do with happy space mentally more than physically. I agree. For friends and family, which often overlook such cases, they're right there, they're your friends, they're your foes, they're your spouses, and you can't tell how bad it is. What would you advise them to look out for, especially in stressful cases where you know you're going through something?
No, I think not just for our loved ones, but for ourselves also. First, let's understand this, that why is it important? Let's say, pick up a medical illness, diabetes, let's say, right? Now, let's say when you start having early diabetic changes, and if you start with the intervention, medical, dietary, activity, whatever it is, vis-a-vis, let's say you start this treatment 2 or 3 years after it has already done a lot more impact on you. So naturally, early intervention will make a difference. We are at the end of the day talking about a medical science. So if let's say somebody is having depression, somebody is having anxiety, if you don't do intervention, give the intervention at the right time, you are looking at the manifestation of the illness, the impact of the illness becoming a lot more. So early identification is important, and early identification and early seeking help. So identification and intervention, incomplete without each other. So how do you identify?
Correct.
If let's say you are having some emotional changes, let's say mood, your mood's low, irate, anxious, mood changes. Let's say changes in thoughts, having negative thoughts, thoughts which are fearful, let's say having behavioral change, withdrawn, irritable, anger outbursts, risky behavior, let's say a change in your overall work related output, which could even be for students. So sudden deterioration in the scores, or sudden fall in the marks, or change in the way this young person's approaching academics, or let's say somebody whose work starts seeing a lot of human errors, which is different to what they've been. Or let's say impact on relationships. You become withdrawn, or you start having a lot frequent fights. Let's say at the level of your physiological symptoms, sleep, appetite, weight, fatigue, overall sense of self well-being, sense of feeling that joy, positivity. If let's say some of these are being impacted, and let's say they are being impacted consistently for a period in time, let's say for a discussion bare minimum 2 weeks. So bare minimum 2 weeks, some of these continuously there and causing impairment of your functionality.
Motor or working?
Impairment of functionality. So let's, to give you an example, you had a bad day, you're feeling bad for a couple of days, had something at your workplace, you feel low, 2, 3, 4 days, then you go, it starts falling back and you are back on your track. No, this is not depression.
Correct. So
you felt bad
that, yes,
for a couple of days to an incident that happened. Now let's say this feeling low lasts for about 2 weeks. Let's say it's also coming up with impairment in your occupational, social, personal level of functionality. Then it could be a concern. Now you seek help. So that's how you need to understand.
Actually, I'm very, very glad you said that, because a lot of us are I've had friends who've gone and committed suicide, sorry to say that, and
so
we could not
to interrupt
detect.
To interrupt you, two aspects. The language and the narrative that we use to talk about suicide needs to be also very carefully,
Okay.
including by media.
Okay.
So it's death by suicide, not committed suicide.
Okay.
Right? And if we are talking about suicide, then it's also important that while people watch this, you need to be able to give various suicide prevention helplines,
Yes, of course.
which can be read right now. Because if you look at the guidelines of reportage and conversation in the public domain of how to and what not to talk when it comes to suicide, that also needs to be seen.
How has it changed? How would you want it to be seen versus how it was reported earlier? What is it that you're trying to bring forth to light?
So let's say language. You say death by suicide and not committed suicide. You don't sensationalize it. You don't talk about the methodology. You don't share images. You don't share details. You don't share notes. You don't do conjecture of what happened and what did not happen. You don't know. You won't know. You aren't there. You just can't talk to 3 people and decide what was the cause or the reason.
Brilliant.
You don't do that.
Brilliant.
And when you are talking about focus on the emotional aspect, focus on the loss, focus on the impact, focus on the solution, and make sure that you mention helplines at the same time. This is how reportage needs to be there.
I love it. Having stayed overseas and lost somebody on it and being back in India, how do they handle it then? And where are we coming of age on this topic, since we kind of stumbled on this?
No, I think to be fair, globally there has been a lot of attempt by various bodies, including bodies from mental health, to work towards suicide prevention. I think that's something which is only becoming more intentional. Even if you look at the work our government has done, I think Telemanas is absolutely brilliant. I think Telemanas, my read on this is that probably a few years down the lane, the world will stand up and realize the sheer impact of Telemanas, and it probably will be one of the models that people will eventually talk about in terms of the sheer scale and the impact of what Telemanas has been doing, and which is remarkable. At the same time, whether it is working in school populations, whether it is working in the work that's happening in workplaces, the access and availability of various crisis intervention, suicide prevention helplines. So there is very much work happening. 10th September every year is World Suicide Prevention Day also.
Correct.
The whole idea being that we need to talk about things in a way that our actions become solutions.
Interesting.
And that, I think, is the key aspect. But every now and then, you will still see that an image might be floated here and there, faulty narrative might be there, some of the stereotypical insensitive approaches may be there, which is not good for the collective well-being of any society that cares for people.
Lovely put, lovely put. While we are on the, you just mentioned about corporate mental wellness space. Recently we had an unfortunate incident with a large corporate. As peers, people who we either report to someone or somebody reports to us, and we have team members, if we have detected that the person is really not flying very well, lagging at work, yes, he has his own HR reviewing him, how can we be responsible enough to let the corporate know, hey, this is going a bit far, maybe he's not really in a good space? How do you approach that? It's a common issue, and I've myself struggled with it. I mean, we've been there. How would you advise?
One, I feel that workplace mental health has not received the kind of priority. If I were to compare workplace mental health with school mental health, I think schools have done a lot better and a lot deeper work. And the extent is far better. And I don't think workplace has been able to match that. Workplace mental health sometimes ends up being a tick in the box in the form of an EAP program, which is not really having the highest use in terms of people. At the same time, workplace mental health also needs to be seen in a spectrum and not merely on the lines of merely giving tips and self-help. Workplace mental health needs to be seen more deeper in terms of identifying and understanding what mental health and mental illnesses are. Also making sure that there is access. See, if you just create awareness and don't bring access, what will you do with that awareness? So if you give me awareness and I realize I have a problem, but you also don't give me an access to the solution, what will I do with the problem? I think that's what needs to happen. I think all workplaces need to have a dedicated, end-to-end, complete mental health solution, a program which starts from awareness, screening, self-help, psychological intervention, psychiatry intervention, relapse prevention, if need be, from inpatient support to rehab support, all of it needs to be there. And I feel our organizations can do this, and every organization needs to have a comprehensive mental health support. If you are going to have a viral infection, you are going to have it. If you're going to have diabetes, you are going to have it. Yes, there will always be a statistical difference between one group and another, but that does not mean that any one group is completely not going to get any medical concern for that matter. That's
Correct.
not how it works.
Correct.
What corporates can also do is, I think psychological first aid is less talked about in our part of the world. Look, listen, link. Look meaning learn how to identify. Listen, which means talk in a non-judgmental, empathetic, genuine manner. And link, which means take this individual, help this and guide this individual to the solution. So that's psychological first aid. I see no reason why organizations should not have psychological first aid becoming an integral part of their training and their skill building programs. There's no reason not to have it. There's no excuse actually. If you don't have it, you're giving incomplete work. For example, when you have these this annual medical checkups and preventive checkups,
Yes,
I have a big problem with preventive health checkups being called preventive health checkups.
Why?
Because if it doesn't have mental health, don't call it health. I
Fabulous.
started by saying that define health without mental health. If you want to do a preventive health checkup which does not include mental health, call it at least a preventive physical health checkup. But don't call it, don't use a misnomer of health. And if you are doing a employee annual checkup, and if it doesn't have mental health, then you just a little bit part of its individual's overall well-being or overall sense of health that you are seeing, but you are ignoring most parts of it. It's just what about you?
You just stunned me there for a second. It is such an insight, and somehow it's just sinking in. I have a follow-through question for it. You had said, if who you are and what you portray is similar, you will not have ethical dilemmas and not struggle with yourself. I really loved it because
this
it
is what
is so key. Please talk about it.
I mean, this is I phrased it like that on a social media platform, yes, but this actually comes from a conversation with my teacher, so Dr. Bharat Panchal, and if you're listening to this, gratitude forever and ever after, because generations of people like me would have crossed Dr. Panchal's path, whatever I was at that time, to what becomes of you. It's just like a change, cleansing process of life. But so this is what he said on one of our conversations, that you won't have an ethical problem because you aren't lying and you are covering up, you are being who you are. But what has happened now is that in this world of filters and in this world of do this in this way and do this in that way, what we portray, you wouldn't remember, because you portray A in front of some people, B in front of someone else, C in front of someone else, D in front of someone else. Eventually you wouldn't know
who you are,
and your sense of self will start getting diluted more and more. If you are who you are. You don't need to be different with different people. That's the best way to stay ethical.
I think it's one of the best things. This whole idea about me, I, me, positive. I think it's gone too far. Your thoughts?
If I'm portraying what I'm not feeling, then it doesn't change what I'm feeling. So if I'm feeling, let's say, something negative right now, and I'm going to portray positive, it's not changing my internal experience. And if I don't resolve that internal experience by myself, with the help of friends, family, well-wishers, with the help of a mental health professional, with the help of a guide, whoever, in whichever way, if I don't do that, then irrespective of what I'm showing, I'm going to continue to feel this distress. And if I'm forced to not express my distress, which is the only way somebody or I will get help, because how would you know I'm under distress if I don't share it? But if I'm forced by the environment that you have to only show positive, you have to only be cheerful, you, no matter what, show only what we want to see, that will only make people struggle more. And eventually the struggles go in silence, because the perception is, you don't want to listen to what I feel, you don't want me to express actually what I feel. And if you don't want to feel it, and if you just want me to be almost like a bot or a puppet to say what you want, then well.
Wow. And this is a question I often ask myself and friends around me, and I tell them, whatever you're feeling, whether it is popular or not, or accepted or not, I think you should get it out of your system, at least. Is that a good approach?
See, first of all, popularity is just a word. It has no meaning whatsoever. It's transient. In the longitudinal axis of life, every aspect of what you see as popular, viral, trendy is as useless as it gets. There is no meaning behind it. You may have done some interview, let's say a few 100,000 or more people saw it. They'll also forget it equally fast. The world will move on. You may keep a spotlight on your own self if you want to, and keep feeling that that's how the world is seeing. The world has its own concerns also. Everybody is living a life. So this whole aspect of what is trending and let me be a part of it, what is popular and let me try and be a part of it, let me imitate, let me copy,
let me think like that now. It's how does it? Yes, I agree.
It's just, Imitation will never be as good as the original, so what's the point?
Oh, you believe in limited editions as well, like you have to be one. On that, and I had a leading question to that. So, these new age words, toxic, trauma, this, that. I mean, just because somebody yelled at me doesn't mean I have trauma.
No, you don't.
And if somebody yelled at me doesn't mean he's a psychopath either. Please, for the young lot, please try to explain the actual medical or clinical or psychological difference between trauma and a little bit of a problem, issues. Somebody who's like a little angry but doesn't make him a psychopath altogether. And not everybody who likes themselves is a narcissist. I mean, I'm bored of that.
When you read something and it comes on your feed, or when your immediate social network is talking about something, and what information reaches you, even if it reaches you by, let's say, a few people, even if it is so-called viral or trending, that doesn't make it right, first of all.
Beautiful.
Right? First, we need to understand this.
Beautiful.
One of the aspects of media literacy is you should know the credibility of the source. So, for example, if you are reading about, let's say, thyroid, and you want to take an opinion on what to do if somebody has hypothyroidism, bare minimum, who's giving you advice, you will look at their credibility. Simple as that. Are they subject matter expert? What experience? So on and so forth. You don't go to a dental for a stomach problem, and you don't go to a stomach doctor for a dental problem. Simple as that. This applies to information gathering also. Now, because some of these words, trauma, psychopath, like you mentioned, depression for that matter, anxiety, narcissist, these are all words which have an English meaning as well. So if you were to say, I am feeling low, let's say you are feeling low today. In English language, you may feel, it may not be incorrect for you to say that I am feeling sad, I am feeling as though I am feeling depressed, I am feeling low, right? Because there is an English meaning. Now, diabetes, typhoid don't have that English meaning in a way. It's a medical term. So what happens here is that when we use the word depression or anxiety, not in the clinical context, we start comparing or thinking that the non-clinical aspect and the clinical are the same.
What?
So for example, you're doing this interview, let's say you were stuck in traffic, you had blocked time for an hour, you're running half an hour late, you're feeling anxious. Obviously, that's normal. But that does not mean you have an anxiety disorder.
Exactly.
Even though the word anxiety is same applies for depression. So what is trauma? Trauma is when you directly or somebody around you experience, or loved one experienced, a direct threat to life, a potential serious bodily harm. You experience intense sense of horror, helplessness during that time. That is trauma in the way we see trauma in the clinical term. And then whether you look at a post-traumatic stress disorder, you look at trauma-informed therapy, this is trauma, right? But trauma also has an English meaning. So you may have a young kid coming and saying, the teacher was scolding me, I felt traumatized. Now, in English this is fine. But that does not mean this was a trauma which requires to be seen on the lines of what trauma is. Abuse, violence, road traffic accidents, natural calamities, trauma, war, conflict, trauma. Which does not mean that the emotional distress we experience does not give us intense distress. So one may have a relationship ending, one may have a struggle in a relationship, one may have a problem in examinations, one may have some major stresses at workplace. They will give you intense distress and they need to be equally handled sensitively, responsibly. These individuals need to be supported, helped. But that is not trauma.
I just love it you said that. I have had, young friends of mine, young a lot, they'll say, oh, they use these words so loosely. I had a bad date, I'm in PTSD. My teachers threw me out of the school. I have full anxiety disorder. Somebody needs to correct it, and literally, I think people like you're like God sent in today's day and age, because people are just using it so lightly without thinking. They literally manifesting it. मेरे को PTSD है. You had a bad day, it's not PTSD.
Correct. What happens is that we are taking away the sensitivity of response at times. Meaning, if let's say you are talking lightly about something, mocking something, making fun of something, diluting something, and there is somebody there in your vicinity who's struggling and hears how their loved ones are talking about it, will probably not want to talk to them or anybody else also. But like I said, a lot of this is also because of the language, the meanings of these words in language, and I think that's what it is.
You had spoken about asylums to mental hospital, insanity to mental ailments, how one has come so far. I'll read a bit. This evolution or more chatter, this whole chatter of going ahead, has it actually solved the problem? We still have 75% of the people who don't seek intervention globally. Comment.
I think the beauty about science is that science is willing to adapt. What applies today, science is willing to say tomorrow that, well, I had less data points, now I have better data points and I have a better way to approach it. So, let's say several decades back, we did not have medications that could have taken care of a lot of mental ailments. And what diagnosis we were using, let's say several decades back, that has also evolved. One has realized a lot more, including treatments. So some of the medications which are now available were not there 50, 60 years back. If they weren't available there at that time, those individuals were using whatever best was available then. Neither was that bad, but it had to evolve. So at any given moment in time, I will use what is best available to me in terms of explanation and solution. And that will go on changing. What one needs to understand is that mental health continues to be that big herd of elephants in each of our rooms that we continue to not see, and we continue to approach it with stereotyping, judgmentalism, with stigma, which is why millions suffer in silence, because they feel they won't get it, they may not be able to help me, there may not be help available. You still will find, if you will do a dipstick around, friends, family, extended social network, and you ask them about a psychiatry medication, and lots of them will say, don't take it, you'll become habituated. That's rubbish. Lots of them will tell you, if you'll take it, it'll make you groggy throughout the day, and they'll give you their sedatives. Nonsense. Somebody will tell you, therapy will make you dependent and you would rather talk to a friend or a family. You should talk to your friend, your family, but therapy will not make you dependent. It will, on the contrary, make your quality of life, your skill set, and all better. So some of these stigmas that are around have been around for such a long time. They're not going to go overnight. There are hundreds of such conversations happening every day globally. The change, whenever it will happen. That's also evolution in its own way. The difference is, I think that more people are willing to talk about it. I think the more we talk about it, eventually there will also be followed by more intentionality in terms of actions also. Correct. Lots of conversation doesn't always convert into lots of action. But lots of conversation eventually would bring in a lot more of action, and that's how I see it.
Small everyday habits which one can imbibe as somebody who goes to work, as a family, help fortify a good mental space.
Yes. I mean, our approach to life will always help us feel better, which may not be the case as a solution or a treatment to a medical problem.
Correct.
But for our overall quality of life, our approach to life will make a difference. For example, something as simple as your sleep-awake pattern, something as simple as the hours you spend scrolling. If you are spending time with a loved one, are you there mindfully, or are you still doing your own bit? Are you do you have physical activity in your routine? Are you spending time into activities that bring meaning for your own self? Do you find time into things that you like doing? All of those things will matter. So whether it is the healthy component of the lifestyle, whether it is your relationship and the investment in relationships, whether it is your self-care and the approach towards your own health and well-being, all of that will matter.
On the topic of sleep, seems to be a big... I don't remember my parents losing so much sleep ever. I remember me losing a lot of sleep. I know my friends' kids who are much younger losing a lot of sleep. What shifted? What happened? It can't be just screen time. It has to have a lot more than
No, but I think
that.
screen time is very much a concern, because screen time will have multiple impacts. Screen time is not merely about the fact that you are doing some stimulatory screen time while you are in your bed or while you are trying to rest. It's also about the time screen time takes away from your physical activity, also from your social engagements. All of that also has an impact. Most people that one sees around, at least who meet me, are people who will tell you that their phone is lying next to their bed. A lot of people don't switch off their phone when they go to sleep.
You just plug it and go to sleep.
Yeah, and if they are half awake, they'll still want to check on a notification, or they wake up and they spend some time on the phone before going to bed. They on the phone, if they are even doing taking a break here on the phone, it's like you go to see a sunset and probably 80% of people are not watching the sunset. They're either watching their own selves and clicking a selfie in the sunset and forgot that they came miles to see this beautiful aspect of nature, but they were so lost inclined to click an image, and so on and so forth. So some of these aspects need to be given importance to. Our physical activity, the nature of physical activity has to be seen. Sleep hygiene is something which is important. How much physical activity you do, what is your sleep time routine, do you use screens from your bed, do you work from your bed, do you eat on your bed? All of that makes a difference.
Does that kind of proximity to phone or screens have physiological impacts?
See, that's a question, to be honest, that can be asked to my colleagues from the respective medical fields. But I will give you the mental health answer to this. When you are doing and when you are engaging with something on the screen, you are not giving your mind rest.
Yes.
Because it's interactive engagement.
It's working, still working.
Right? Unlike, let's say, reading a book. But when you are doing that on the phone, you get a notification, you go here, you go there. So you're just not switching off enough. So for anybody listening to this, 45 minutes to an hour before going to bed, just switch off. I've said this earlier also, I'm repeating this. You may want to believe that the world will be different, or the world will feel that something's amiss because your phone is switched off. It'll be right there next morning also. It's okay. We sometimes give ourselves a lot more importance than we should. I switch off my cell.
Any difference does the cultural make of the society, of each society, and the kind of mental health issues that they have? Are there any different seemingly where it's coming from? Is a lot of us are now single. We have our primary families there, but we don't have a partner. I've seen a lot of my female friends really struggle with loneliness. Should they go to somewhere just to talk? It's very difficult for them to figure out where to seek the help. Single people is a huge issue, both overseas and now it's really coming to India, me being one of them. But somehow I'm in a close-knit family. I have really close friends. Work really keeps me absorbed. but not many people may enjoy that luxury. Like having a great family is luxury. Actually, today's date, without conflicts, having a partner. How would you address them? This is...
When it comes to loneliness, I'd written a book actually with my colleague Kamna Shibbir. It's called Alone in the Crowd,
Okay.
which is on how to overcome loneliness in urban spaces. I'll just touch on two aspects there: meaningful relationships and mindfulness of urban living. These two things I think are very important, which means how mindful I am of the moments that I live, how much I am there, how wholesome is my experience. That's also important, and there is no substitute for meaningful relationships. If you look at that longitudinal axis, Harvard study on happiness, then the single factor which was considered to be the key aspect was happiness. So on happiness was relationships. We all need to invest into relationships. Relationships are over and beyond some of the emoticons and texts and the messages that we exchange, and they are far, far, far beyond how many people are on your social media platform. I don't like to use the word follower. I think there's a lot of narcissism about the word follower. Who am I that I should have followers? Why have that word? I mean, call it a network, call it what you want. They're neither friends nor followers. So we'll probably need to find the right term, if we can, for some of these changes that we are experiencing. See, the experience of feeling lonely is not about culture. It is about this individual and the nature of relationships that they have and the nature of relationships that they have with their own self. So that's how you need to understand this. When you say that some of us have the luxury of having family and support, how I see it is that we need to invest in relationships.
And work towards it.
We need to work towards it. It's not about being a mismatch. It's about working to be able to have a meaningful relationships. This is a sibling, a cousin, an extended family, a partner. That doesn't change this. No relationship can sustain its quality if effort is not put. We need to prioritize this. Somehow, the way at the speed life is going, and so many of our distractions and engagements that are there and pressures that are there, to be honest, we don't put relationships at the level where we should, and which is where a lot of us end up struggling.
I agree. I want to hear more. The importance of having a relationship, especially it may not be a romantic relationship. That's not where I'm going, but I do see, and I'm coming from the space of information that we amuse. You go travel on your own way. You can be this, you can be alone. I mean, it's a good strength to have when all things fall around you. But we are, as humans, hardwired to be with our family, our loved ones. And that seemingly seems to be repeatedly discouraged in narratives, or not handled properly. What are your thoughts?
I'm saying, first of all, we need to understand we are all unique individuals and there is no generalization to life.
Agreed.
Right? There are people who will be able to travel by themselves and they will enjoy it, and they should.
And they should.
But there are people who won't be able to, and they don't need to force themselves to do something that doesn't fit in with who they are. That's the way to look at life. So just because you are able to do solo travel, that doesn't mean I should, or I should feel the pressure to do it. I can't. I don't need to be who I am not. And that generalization we need to avoid, and that's why I was speaking earlier about unpopularity or trend. I mean, fine if there is a trend, but what is a trend?
Doctor, I would love to know what your organization is doing and what your what your actual passions are about going ahead next, let's say 5 to 10 years in mental wellness space.
See, I can only speak, what we are thinking right now. 5 to 10 years, who's seen? It's to predict that I'll be able to do something in 10 years is also narcissism, because who knows what happens tomorrow.
I like that.
But I think the important thing is that when it comes to the work that is happening at Fortis Healthcare, I think it's the key aspect there, and the fact that you are talking to me about this, it's just a reflection of our core belief that mental health is as important as any other aspect of health. And like I said, and I continue to say it, mental health solutions for our country, or for that matter any other country, are not about experts. Everybody is a stakeholder and everybody has a role to play. Clinicians or mental health professionals do have a role to play. I feel any and every possible mental health professional should give some time in reaching out and breaking the stigma and reaching out and hitting stereotyping hard, and creating more and more awareness, because today the awareness I'll create, a couple of generations down the lane, there'll be more people who will be more willing to seek help, and that's a thought process for the mental health fraternity. For healthcare providers, I think healthcare providers not having integrated, comprehensive mental health programs makes most hospitals incomplete. And this is whether it is at the primary level or it's at the tertiary care level, I think it's just incomplete. And I think healthcare providers need to do this. Organizations need to have workplace mental health. Schools need to have a strong approach to mental health, having mental health curriculums, having media literacy. From day one, having media literacy, having work around bullying, making sure that life skills education is imparted and children are empowered. The same work needs to happen in academic institutes and colleges. We need to have RWAs which are aware about psychological first aid. Psychological first aid needs to become a part of who we are as a society. Media needs to play a role. Role models of the world need to talk a lot more on.
Really badly, yes.
And I say this to a lot of people who write about several things, and I just tell them that millions of people are listening to what you are saying, so how about every seventh thought thing that you say is related to mental health, because that's his statistics. So how about you continue to do that? So everybody has a role. In our limited capacity, what Fortis Healthcare is committed to is making sure that mental health is integrated in what we do. So whether it is in our tertiary cares programs, whether it's support during ICU, the work that we do in psycho-oncology in cancer, whether the work that we do in our clinical space with our psychology program, our psychiatry program. What I feel that there is a commitment, and it's very, very fortunate to be in an organization which continues to support. So our school mental health program, we do this quiz every year called Psyched for students on psychology. Across the country, we take lots of workshops, webinars, sessions with parents, teachers and students. It's something that we believe in. We work with some NGOs and support them in what they are doing. We do have a very strong workplace mental health program which we are recently doing, and I think something that's very close to an initiative for all of us is Adayu, adding value to your IU, is a division, a vertical started by Fortis, where we are going to focus only on mental health, and very shortly we would be starting to have standalone hospitals for psychiatry care. We recognize that inpatient care when it comes to for mental health patients continues to be missing in terms of the kind of support, beds, quality care that should be there. So that's something that we are doing, and to embrace a lot of innovation. I see AI supporting mental health in various ways over the next couple of decades. I see virtual reality being used as well. All of this, I think, needs to be we need to be open for this. I know a lot of people say that it's not good enough, and my answer is the same. Right now, I use what is best available to me so that I can help maximum people to the best that we can, and reach maximum people also. Because that reach is the goal. And then you keep raising the bar. When science upgrades itself, you then bring that in.
I can't help but be amazed. People like us who are trying to practice mental wellness, not staying away from disputes, fights, stressful situations. Now you do that from morning to night, and of course the people who come here have their own pain and anger and actual trauma. How do you keep yourself fortified?
No, two different aspects. I think one needs to understand that when you are working with somebody who's come to you for help, you are doing what you're trained to do, right? You try and do the best that you can do based on your knowledge, whatever little expertise you have. You try and do the best. You follow the guidelines. You do the right things that you think are the best for this particular individual with the kind of problem they have. Whether it is giving them guidance, whether it is giving them medications in my case, or whether I'm asking to take guidance and sessions from a colleague from the psychology field, or maybe going for a medical checkup based on what they have. That's what one does. And I don't like typically to over glamorize this in a way that people come to you with problems and how do you deal. I don't think that's how it is, because if you talk to my friend who's a neurosurgeon, and I keep telling him that how do you, this Dr. Sandeep Vaish, very famous man. So I tell him that how do you do these long surgeries of 10 hours, 12 hours, or standing doing. I mean, I wouldn't have lasted in the OT for a few minutes. And then he could probably end up saying that, how do you do these, back to back, you keep talking to people, and that's life. Got trained into doing something is probably amongst the best. I got trained into doing something, and we try and do whatever we can. So that what we do in terms of our skill set, that skill set that has been trained by our teachers, by our seniors, by experience, that happens to everyone, is one part of it. The other part is how do, let's say, in terms of mental health professionals, I can only speak about myself, are human beings, right? So I don't see that. So you can't have a discussion on, how what would you do with if you had a sibling who's a mental health professional, or what is different if you have a spouse who's a mental health professional. A human being. Relationship is with the human being, not with the profession.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
Now when it comes to self-care, we all, if let's say I go through stress, I will experience it. I'm a human being. Difference probably now is that if I will go through the stress, I know I need to talk to someone. Now I may pick and choose based on what the issue is. We all need to have habits, approach to life that works for us. So when it comes to me, I'm a person who likes plants. So I spend some time, let's say, taking care of plants from indoor, outdoor. I really like that. I love listening to music, Hindustani classical music. That's what I like to listen to. Long tiring day, you give me a Janjoti by Rashid Khan Sahab, or you give me a nice Govind Damodar Mahadeviti by Pandit Jasraj ji, you give me a God Sarang by Pandit Bhimsen Joshi, and that's it. I know that's the thing for me. But that doesn't mean that you also need to do the same. You may like some other genre, or you may not like music. We may be different people. But I will not be the person who will like to go out to, let's say, I would not like to socialize, let's say, in a way that there are lots of people. I'd much rather spend an evening with very, very close loved ones. I read a lot. I remember first time going to Dr. Vankar's house, 3 rooms, 4, I don't remember now fully. It's talking about late 1990s. all rooms with books. And you'll say, I want to read something, you'll go there, look into all that and pick one book and say, "Dr. Sahab, ye padhiye." And then you discuss. So what it helped was that not only relaxing, but knowledge, the spectrum, the lateral spectrum that it helps you. So when you read something from a part of the world that you're not exposed to, or you look at perspectives that you would have not been exposed to, some of those aspects. So for me, that is what it is. But everybody will have a different approach. I don't think generalizations work. So I don't think to say that psychiatrists relax or unwind like this would be fine. All psychologists relax like this, all they should do this. I don't think that's true. Mental health professionals, like other people, are human beings. They will go through their own emotions. They will go through their own stresses. That's how it is.
Last question for my audience. If you had one platform in the world and if you would advise young people about mental wellness, how to detect it or go for help, and also not over glamorize it, what would be a very good, sane, practical mid-ground advice you'll give to them? It's very important.
2-3 parts to it. Part 1, unmute yourself.
Wow.
You speak, you share, you express, you don't hesitate. If it's a struggle, share it. Part 2 of the same unmute yourself, you unmute your compassion as well. So when somebody is talking to you, reaching out to you, you bring non-judgmental, empathetic, compassionate response.
Wow.
So that's one part of it. Second part, hear the silence. There is silence around us because people are struggling, because we collectively have created this narrative and this social milieu where we have made people feel that they'll be discriminated against, there is stigma, that they are not able to come and talk about it. And one of the reasons is also our own narrative, words we use, language we choose, what we write, what we say, all of that. And if you want to take care of yourself, just invest in relationships. Everything else is overrated.
Lovely. Dr. Parikh, thank you so much. That was lovely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.